Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. I, as always, am your host, Jay Stone, and we're up to episode 56, going on the 2-year anniversary of this little experiment. Didn't think it would go on this long, but I'm glad it has. Obviously, a lot of things pending on the actual website front. Some of you know, some of you don't. We're actually rebuilding. Hopefully we'll have more news from that soon. But if you want to be involved in helping to steer the direction of Dying Scene going forward, follow us on social media, drop us a line, whether on Instagram or Twitter. I think we're still on Facebook, if anybody's still on Facebook these days, or just email me, jay@dyingscene.com, and we'll bring you on board. We'll chat. Anyway, that brings us to episode 56. For the first time in quite a while, we're joined by a full band. I know last year we had all 4 members, then at the time, the 4 members of Kalimasi, one of my favorite bands. They all joined us for an episode probably last April around the release of their last album, which is still amazing and which I have still yet to see them live because of stupid COVID. But today we're joined by another full band. This band is Proper. They are a 3-piece. You may remember from when they were called the Great Wight. They put out an album probably 2017, I think. It was actually reviewed on Dying Scene. If you check the ashes of what is Dying Scene at this point and search for the Great Wight, Wight spelled W-I-G-H-T, there is an album review and I think an email exchange with Erik, the front person for the group. I don't know who did the interview and I don't know who did the review, because one of the things that we lost when the site crashed is the ability to figure out who wrote what story. So props to whoever actually wrote the review. It was very good, and did the email interview. It was also very good. But we finally, the band has renamed themselves to Proper. They put out a new album in 2019, which is called I Spent the Winter Writing Songs About Getting Better. It is phenomenal. And I remember the first time I heard it thinking, oh my God, how have I never heard this band before? And how have I never heard anything like this before? And so it sort of blew me away. Let me tell you that The Great American Novel, which is their brand new album, which comes out digitally, at least on March 25th, which is next week, and then physically next month on Father-Daughter Records here in the States. The new album is amazing. It will melt your face off. There are so many different layers and textures and tempo speeds, and the lyrics are very real and honest, as you would imagine from what I guess we're calling like a 5th wave emo band. I hate labels, and saying something like 5th wave emo sounds, I don't know, corny. But maybe I think the genre is in on the joke at this point, so that's the whole thing. But anyway, the album is called The Great American Novel. There are a couple of videos that you can watch. Red, White, and Blue is out there. Huerta is out there. Milk and Honey is out there. They are phenomenal, and they give a good little taste of what's to come from this album. But let me tell you, there are some moments on this album that might rattle around your brain a little bit. They're phenomenal. Anyway, so we got the whole band together over Zoom, Erik and Eli and Natasha. We talked about an awful lot of things, from the gatekeeping that sort of middle-aged white guys like myself do in this scene, sometimes for better or for worse. We talk about how the George Floyd murder a couple of years back hopefully helped change things and put things in a different perspective. We talked about musical upbringings. We talked about the scene in El Paso in the last 20 years. We talked about prog rock. We talked about the Ducky Boys, to throw a local Boston area reference in. And I think that's sort of what happens when you have people from all over the country that get together in Brooklyn with all of their different influences. And even though it's only a 3-piece band, their influences are pretty far ranging. Erik's got an interesting backstory. Eli's got an interesting backstory. Natasha's got an interesting backstory, and they all sort of came together in New York City and formed this phenomenal band that is unlike most bands that I've ever heard. So without any further ado, here are Eli and Erik and Natasha from Proper. It is episode 56 of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show, and it starts right now.
This meeting's recorded. Got it. Okay.
Yeah, everybody hears that, right? When it says recording in progress.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yeah, then little pop up.
It is a little bizarre, and God bless Zoom. Welcome everybody to another episode of Both Laugh, the Dying Scene Quarantine Chat Show. It is the 56th installment of this show for some reason, but today is a special one because I think out of those 56 episodes, as I was just saying before we hit record, it's only the second time we've had a full band on the show, and I'm really excited for this one because I'll explain why after. Joining us this time are Erik and Eli and Natasha from the band Proper. They've got a new album out this spring on Father-Daughter Records, and it's called The Great American Novel, and it will absolutely melt your face off. Gang, welcome and thanks for doing this. This is really cool.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, Proper is a band. I was admittedly late to the game, and I remember listening I spent the winter. I forget how it even ended up in my lap. I remember listening to it the first time and going, how have I not heard this band, and how are they not the best band, the biggest band ever? Because it was unlike anything that I had really ever heard before. It was like all of the sort of influences all melded into something completely new and different. And so the fact that there's another album coming out and it's even bigger and better than the last one is pretty awesome.
Thank you. God, thank you.
Thank you.
So the way that I start a lot of these shows off, it's called the quarantine. Well, it's called Both Laugh, but it's called the Quarantine Chat Show specifically because Dying Scene as a website shat the bed like 2.5 years ago at this point, and for a variety of reasons has yet to be rebuilt, although it is actively being rebuilt now. I can officially say that, like, we've spent thousands of dollars and are rebuilding a website officially, but we had there were no shows to take pictures at, and so there was no place to do that sort of thing or to interview bands anymore. I said, well, I'm a white guy with a beard, I should start a podcast. And now we all have them. I was the last one, but we all have them now. And so one of the things I wanted to do though was to keep in touch with people who, especially real time, because it was just about 2 years ago that this show started, and figuring out what people were doing to sort of stay connected and stay creative, and what sort of plans they had to cancel, et cetera, et cetera. So I do think, even though it's 2 years down the road, it's still sort of interesting to think back to that 2 years ago now. What did Proper have on the radar for 2020, and how far out were you guys booked, and then you had to sort of scrap everything and shift?
Are we
had
allowed to talk about all this stuff?
I think so. I mean,
some of it may still come to fruition, I guess.
Yeah.
Like Wonder Years came to fruition.
Yeah, but that was definitely pre-COVID, I think. Yeah. Or I'd met Dan at a Wonder Years show in 2019. And we were supposed to do, the tour originally was just us without Wonder Years, but Dan manages Future Teens, and we kind of finagled it into something better. But we definitely had that was supposed to happen. UK and Europe, which is now 2 entire years later. I feel like that's all we really had in the books. And then we were talking about South Africa. We found this point person down there who he was down. He gave us a route. And I feel like that's really all we had, right?
Yeah.
At least that was, that had
that's all that
publicized.
Yeah. I'm sure we were supposed to. Yeah, so we were supposed to do something in America and Canada, but I don't think Pooza Fest, but I don't think we'd gotten to really we had just finished the full US run. So I think we were just kind of okay, let's chill on that for a minute.
I feel like Pooza Fest was the first thing for a lot of people that was sort of canceled and made them realize that, oh shit, this is going to actually go on for a while. I think South by, when was South by? It was end of March or beginning of April. And when they canceled, and then when Pooza canceled, it was oh shit, this stuff isn't coming back for a while. It's not just that 2 weeks that we kind of hoped it was going to be at the very beginning.
Funny.
Lock yourself in for 2 weeks, wash your hands, wipe down your groceries, and then we'll be good.
And
then once shit in May, Pooza started getting canceled, it was oh, this isn't good.
Yeah, I think we were supposed to do the UK tour, Europe tour, and then straight to Pooza. So it was kind of in that order that we're just like, oh, that sucks. I guess we'll do it in a couple months, and then a couple months never came.
I do remember, now that you say that, the South Africa thing. I remember maybe on Twitter or something like that
Mhm.
mentioning that you guys were looking at doing South Africa. That I feel like that's a thing that nobody from this neck of the woods does. How did that
Yeah.
even come up? Although I should say, the guy that started Dying Scene 12 or 15 years ago, whatever it was at this point, it all blends together. He actually lives in South Africa now. So I'm
Oh,
sure
wow.
he would, he moved from Brooklyn to South Africa, which is
What
a
a
big
power
move.
move. Yeah.
Yeah. For a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Hi, Dave, if you're listening, but I'm sure he will certainly go out and check you guys out if
Yeah.
you do make it that far. But how did that even pop up on the radar?
I honestly don't remember. So our point person was through Big Scary Monsters, Connor. So I think just as usual, I was just like whining to the labels about not wanting to tour more diverse places, probably. And then they're like, well, I know someone here. And I think that was kind of the gist of it, right? Like, because we're always just like, let's like immediately try and do like Africa and Japan and like places where Black and brown people are. And then realize how hard that is to actually make happen. But this one actually, he was like, well, I know someone, you want me to ask? And then I think it just snowballed from there into like, oh shit, we can actually do this. Are we gonna do this? And then it just didn't happen. COVID.
Yeah.
Was it, I mean, I would assume that it's not just a one or two off if you go to a place like South Africa, except that I know so little about the South African market that I don't know what a tour would look like there.
Yeah.
But how many markets are there to play?
I think it was like a week, right?
Wow.
A week or
It's
so.
like-
I think a week to 10 days.
Yeah, like 10 days, 10 days.
Yeah. Because initially we were trying to do like North Africa, like just go straight down from Europe into Italy and Spain and then do a North African run. But I just couldn't find anyone at all. It was impossible. So we're like, all right, let's try a different part of the continent. But yeah, it was going to be about a week, 10 days, I think.
Is that a thing that, fingers crossed, still happens someday?
I would love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fingers crossed. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if y'all are down, I'm still very much down to give it a shot,
I'm more so down now. I was a little scared last time, but
Yeah.
Does it feel like now, especially because 2 years have gone by, it's like, yeah, we'll go wherever. Like
pretty much.
like
like
the
shoot our
cabin
shot.
fever thing. Yeah.
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 South
Yeah,
Africa, let's go.
Yeah. Just, nowhere, Indiana. Sure. Let's do it. Like, just ready to get out there.
How long was the actual time, the downtime between shows, between when you came off the road at the beginning of 2020 to actually playing again?
Oh God.
Our first show back was October 10th, 2021.
Where?
The Outside Festival that we played in Kingston.
Oh yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
Kingston. Yeah. O plus.
Hot minute.
Positive.
Positive.
Fest.
Positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, up in upstate New York. Because before that we had done a thing for Baby's All Right where we just played like pretty much a live session to a live audience on their phones or whatever. But yeah, I guess so. What was that? A year?
So a
and
year
some
and a half
change?
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
We waited.
Yeah, O Plus
that
Fest.
summer, but
Yeah, and then
like,
we
nah.
did a tour a month later in November, and that was like the first shows in a row type thing. But yeah, October of last year.
How was it actually being back out on the road after so much downtime? Is there a part of it that felt weird being back out after that long, or did that sort of like go away pretty quickly, like muscle memory, and once you start playing?
I felt pretty weird the whole time. I don't know. What about y'all? Like the weirdness didn't go away for me, but I don't know.
I remember being terrified to do it.
Yeah.
But then I guess we got really lucky because there was a lull in all the variants. And it was weird. I don't know. The Glass Beach one was okay, but the Wonder Years one was even weirder because it was like we're all together, but we can't really talk to each other,
Yeah.
And like, mask in the green moon, things of that nature.
I was going to say, did you have to do the whole pod thing, like keep yourselves sort of separate? And
Pretty much.
That's a
Yeah.
wild way to tour.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than not touring, I'm sure, but that's a wild way to tour.
Yeah, just like, the fear of getting sick and like touring with a band where some of them have children. Like that was a pretty new thing for me, at least. I don't think we are doing any tours with anyone that has kids, right?
Nah, the Wonder Years was the first one, I think.
Yeah, and it's just like, yeah, like they had their rooms, we had our rooms, and like, we would like eat some food sometimes together, but definitely it was just like mask on the whole time. We're like completely isolated, but yeah, it's just the weirdness and like the fear of like, all right, now we're playing to like 1,200 people and we're still at the merch table. Like this could go wrong. I had that fear every night on both tours. It was just doesn't really go away.
Were crowds masked up? Because I know, having talked to enough people, I live in the greater Boston area, and we've had sort of a mix of shows. There are some shows where most people are wearing masks, and there are some shows where absolutely nobody is. But having talked to a few people that have been lucky enough to tour the last, I don't know, couple of months of last year, it seems like there are definitely places where everybody is into it, and then Florida exists as well.
Yeah, I feel like people are
not just Florida, not just to shit on Florida, but
it's okay. My dad's from there. I'm allowed to shit on Florida.
Fair enough.
Florida actually wasn't that bad.
Yeah, I was about to say the irony is that it was Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville.
Yeah, Jacksonville at the Archetype.
Yeah. But I mean, granted, it was like a thing where the main band Glass Beach was just very adamant about enforcing the mask. At the very least, strongly encouraging it. And I mean, I guess that was the main difference, is that that first tour was younger, like it was all ages, but primarily like teens, kids. Wonder Years was like definitely more like older adults.
Yeah.
I think the kids were a little bit easier to encourage to do the mask rather than the adults. Not to say that they were hella dismissive, the adults, but
Yeah, they definitely,
Asbury, so.
Asbury Park, there's definitely a guy, just no mask on, just like talking to me so aggressively, he was spitting on the side of my face, and I was just like, I'm too polite to say stop, so I just had the conversation. But it was fine, just, we're living in an unprecedented time, and it's like, doing one of our first tours back, it's just going to be weird until it's not, I hope.
Yeah, hopefully those days come, although who knows, knock wood or whatever is
Yeah.
Let's talk about the new album. Obviously, The Great American Novel. If it were it in yet, I would be like a talk show host and hold it up. I like when I'm able to do that. I can pretend Conan or Letterman or some shit. But when did the writing process for that album come during lockdown, essentially, or were there stems and writing that was done beforehand?
It was definitely in lockdown. So we had done those 4 Lucy singles, and then I think we started talking to labels. Was that summer 2020? I think we maybe even earlier. I don't know, man.
It was a while earlier because we were writing it. I don't know. I'm sorry. The last 2 years.
I'm not even going to try and be like, during this
smart.
time. I don't
know. But
I know we waited a long time between recording and release.
Yeah, but it was more so like, I just don't really like to write unless like I'm backed up against the wall. Like, yo, we need something. So I know I think the first song was You Good, the very first track. And I, sent Tosh and Eli that. And then I think the label's like, okay, cool. Like, when would you want to get in the studio? And then we just kind of banged it all out in like 3 weeks in November of 2020. We kind of just like, if we're going to write, let's just do it all in one go type thing.
Did you write all together? I mean, I know you said you sent them the first track, but from there on, did you write all together, or how does that sort of process work? And was it different with this record because everybody was kind of at home?
Well, it was different because Elijah up and moved with like a month's notice. So what did we do? Like
we wrote it. We were actually more collaborative with this record than any of the other ones. Yeah.
But we definitely had like a stretch where like, I think Tosh was on vacation. So me and Eli for the first 4 days, we were in this practice space just doing like a song or 2 a day, getting the bare bones of it figured out, right? And then like Tosh got back, and then we hammered out like Red, White, and Blue. I think I had showed you. I still hadn't had Ganymede figured out, but yeah, Milk and Honey.
A lot of them, majority of the songs.
Yeah,
like
so
a handful.
Yeah, there's actually like the irony is like we're in lockdown, but this is the most collaborative writing process we
Yeah,
had
yeah,
for
yeah.
an album. And it literally is just like I, got GarageBand and a shitty little like interface and started demoing stuff out. And we were like, Eli's leaving. We need to figure out the brunt of it. So I feel like we got like what 11 of the 15 songs figured out. And then Eli had left, and then I was like, all right, we got this. Then I pieced it together with GarageBand, and like the last 4, I was like, here's this song, like the usual way we used to do it.
Where did you move to, Eli?
So first I was in Denver, and now I'm in Washington State. So I hope to never move again for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
You moved across country and then further across country during a quarantine.
Right?
It was the things you do for love.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get it. Well, you're from where, Texas originally or something too, right?
Yeah, El Paso. Yeah.
Did you move to New York for love as well, or for love of music, or for not wanting to be in Texas anymore?
For the love of the game, baby.
Love the game.
I mean, no, I moved there. When did I move there? Back in 2016, right? That's when we met, Erik? Or was it 2017?
I moved there 2015. So yeah, I think you were a year after me, 2016, because then the album came out 2017. So yeah, 2016.
So I had moved there just for work. I'm a journalist. That's like the full-time gig.
Right.
And when I was about to move, Erik's is Mila, your partner now?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. She was like, hey, your cousin, who his name is Ahmad, he's also a drummer. He was like, your cousin told me that you drum. Can I put you in touch with my friend at the time, Erik?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. She was like, he's looking for a drummer. And I was like, cool. So we linked up. We used to go to like a practice space where we had to pay like $25 an hour.
Oh yeah, the Irvington. Yeah.
I'll never forget about that.
3-hour minimum, by the way.
Yeah.
Tough road.
Yeah, from there, yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned that the collaboration was actually better during quarantine, even though we're all theoretically locked down. That's been sort of a recurring theme. So I think people have been using that as a way to actually stay connected with each other. And the last episode of the show was Jason from Hot Water Music, and they had written, they're like my favorite band of all time, one of my favorite bands from all time.
Hell yeah.
So they had gotten into this cycle where there was always a reason not to be writing music. Like there was there's always anything else to do, and tours and real life and kids and da 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 da.
Yeah.
So they decided to hire a producer on this record, the one that's coming out this week. And he organized basically this, like they had weekly Zoom meetings, and then they would do breakout sessions where they had to write and then come back to each other and play their songs. And it sort of like forced them to stay connected, but also forced them to stay creative and actually write, which to me is like, if we're going to be in Zoom purgatory for however long, that's a pretty good way to use it,
Yeah. I actually don't mind Zoom. I like, I was never an in the office kind of person. So Zoom is really, I love this shit.
Yeah, you know what? So do I. And a lot of people that I work with hate it because they would rather either talk on the phone or be in person. But I would rather not talk on the phone or be in person.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that hard.
But I feel like this, I've done most of the interviews that I've done over the years have been over the phone. Sometimes, you meet with somebody backstage in a green room or whatever, but most of the time it's been over the phone. And it can be a challenge to actually, especially if you have somebody that can talk, it can be a challenge to have to pay attention.
Yeah.
Like my ADD is wild sometimes. So if somebody's telling a story, then I have to remember that, I'm actually interviewing this person. We're not just shooting the shit.
Yeah.
So that like Zoom helps me focus and, wear
this
pants.
A paid advertisement for Zoom brought to you by Concord.
Yeah, seriously. Hey, listen, if they want to, if anybody wants to throw money at us.
Yeah.
I feel like like Proper is exactly one of the bands. I'm glad, as I've mentioned, we're sort of rebuilding the site finally. And we're sort of trying to change the direction of it a little bit. And I feel like Proper is one of those bands that is sort of more along the lines of what we need to be covering. Like we've covered guys that look like me for a long time. You know what I'm saying? Like we've covered, like there's plenty of skate punk bands out there from the 90s, and I like a lot of them, less of them than I used to. But like there's plenty of that. And what we need to be doing is focusing on bands like Proper. So and I will say I was actually part of the website is still working. So I think it crashed before y'all changed your name, but there was at least like an album review and maybe an old email interview from the Great Wight years. So I was
wow,
I'm happy to see that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we got it right a little bit there.
The longevity. Yeah. Thank you for that.
When you're writing collaboratively like that, whether it was, were you in person when you were writing? Like you said, would you get together at a practice space, or was it a lot of trading files and stuff like that? Because I'm fascinated by how this process works.
I would say it was mostly in person, right?
Yeah, it was in person. We kind of hammered it out because we only had Elijah for a little bit. So all the in-person stuff we could get just kind of.
Yeah, it felt like two distinct writing sessions. Like the instrumentals we knocked out as a group, and then I was just like lyrics on my own, and then like some things I would change to fit the lyrics, like little like beats here and there that could like syncopate the word. That could, I don't know if that's the word.
I don't know, it sounds like a good word.
Like that part on Word to Word, it's like the 3 hits where I'm like, no culture, no place, no land to call my own.
Oh yeah.
Okay, because originally it was just played straight through. Then I was just like, what if I emphasize that part? So then I would send it back to them and be like, do you like this little, twiddle, whatever, change? And then kind of we just locked it in. And then it was kind of like in the studio, working with Bartiz, he would kind of be like, what if we changed up, like on Ganymede, it was just going to be the same strumming pattern for all 3 verses. It was like, you notice Eli was doing a different kick pattern for each verse. So it was like, what if we kind of made it syncopate with that? So it's kind of like the in-person instrumental sessions, the lyric sessions, and then in the studio, like on the fly changes were kind of the 3 distinct moments of writing.
Where did Bartiz come into the process? He's another fascinating, he's a fascinating and I think brilliant musician that is another one of those people that everybody should know about.
Yeah,
and I was.
Oh, they will.
Yeah,
they already know. They will, boy.
Yeah,
it was
cooking,
fairly late in the process that I was introduced to Bartiz. I think through I think a mutual acquaintance of ours. I don't know if he produced or he appeared on an album that a friend of mine put out during quarantine as well. And I think they were connected through agents or managers or something like that. And it was another one of these situations where I thought I knew all of the cool bands and all of the cool people. How did I not know this guy before?
Yeah.
How did he come into the fold?
We know Bart for a while, right?
Yeah.
Since he lived in Brooklyn.
Yeah. Like
Since
25
days.
Yeah, 20. I think our first show was because I met my friend Jackson, took me to Bart's like Scrams band's show. So like we knew since before Proper was playing shows, we knew that whole crowd. And we finally got like the budget we wanted. And I think there wasn't that much deliberation. I was like, y'all want to record with Bart? Y'all both just like, yeah. As it tends to be, it's just like, y'all want to do this? And they're just like, yeah, sure, why not? And then I think I texted him, and then like he pulled over his car on the side of the highway. He was like, bro, I am so in. This was before his record had even come out. Out. He was just like, yeah, this is the biggest project out. And then, look at Bart now. But he was just like, I'm so down. What do you need? What's the budget so we can make it work? And he was just like, from the get-go, just like, yeah, man, send me the demos. We got to the studio. Remember, he had like a little notepad with notes on every song, things that he could add, or like little thoughts that he had. And then kind of like from the jump, he was just like foot on the gas, ready to go.
So he was obviously familiar with you, but he hadn't heard any of like the demos or anything like that for this project. It was just like, as soon as he knew you wanted to record with him, he was like, yes, let's do it.
I think so. Yeah. Cause I think we had that conversation and then we finished the demos. And then I sent them to him. So without even hearing a song, he was like,
yeah.
That's got to be a pretty awesome feeling. I mean, it like a pretty validating feeling, right? Like to know that somebody that's that talented gets it
Yeah, that tends to be like how we tend to operate, is like work with people that we think actually believe in us. And, you know, because a lot of it's like there are a lot of business relationships like, oh, we can make each other a lot of money, or oh, we can get each other next step. But like people like Bart, it's like this record sounds as good because he's, you know, he's been fucking with us since our very first album. And we've been playing shows with him since our very first album. And, you know, he's just like, yeah, I've seen what y'all have been doing. I'm in.
Do you feel like I feel like maybe I should say, I feel like we're at this sort of moment. Maybe it's coming out of quarantine, maybe it's coming out of the last 4 or 5 years of whatever, but where it seems like the trajectory of what we call punk rock is sort of changing a little bit. I mean, I think it's broader now than it ever has been, but it's a lot less people like me, frankly.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. But does that seem that way as well? Like from the other side?
I mean, yeah, I mean,
I hope so.
I mean, I don't know, like Eli, you're the journalist. Like, I feel like you see the trends pretty fucking early on. Like, I feel like rock has been getting less like gatekeeped for a while, right? Like, I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, you know, just with like social media, it's become a lot more democratized. And then, I mean, you know, I think just amid, you know, I think we're seeing the trickle effect of things like Black Lives Matter and like George Floyd's death kind of being this galvanizing for whatever reason, the kind of galvanizing point where like everyone is like, all right, like, you know, let's make sure this kind of awareness is just extending beyond like the political sphere and maybe like on a cultural level to where there's just this want for more, you know, awareness and like a real vigilance to like find those bands. Like, I don't know, it was mind blowing to me when Circus Survive announced their tour and Soul Glow was on it. You know,
Yeah.
Like, I was like, that's fucking weird, but also really fucking cool, you know?
Yeah.
And then I mean, when the Armed first announced their like solo shows, there's this basically like somewhat grindcore, metalcore, all black band called Zulu out of LA. And they're supposed to open it with Show Me the Body. And Zulu's been getting all these like really interesting placements. So it's cool because at first I was a little like, you know, I think, I don't know, it's interesting because I mean, I think on a larger scale, obviously, you know, like Willow Smith played a part in this, but it's kind of cool to see how that kind of, I don't know, I'd like to think that indirectly led to a trickle effect on a very like DIY level where it is like groups like Soul Glow or like Zulu, Buggin' out of Chicago, you know, and I mean, even like beyond that, like even if like they're not an all black band, but there's just like POC groups coming out, or just like, you know, members of color in these like, you know, predominantly white groups, you know, like the Armed having like a phenomenal black drummer. You know, that awareness is happening just on like all these levels, which is like a really beautiful thing to see throughout, not just punk, but all like alternative rock subgenres.
Yeah, or for me, it's Turnstile, which I can't believe they're doing the things they're doing. And what's old boy's name? God damn it, I can't remember his name. But yeah, it's just like having a black person in hardcore and seeing them on late night. And that's gonna be have so many black kids are gonna be like, wow, black people play this music. I can do that. Why don't I do that? Let's start a band. Like it's been insane to see. Or Soul Glow opening for My Chemical Romance now also.
Oh yeah,
like it went from like Circus Survive
exactly.
to My Chemical Romance and being like, holy shit.
Like, yeah, dude, it's a very beautiful thing to see, and like, yeah, I'm really excited for it. I mean, even if like we think on more of like the softer end of things, of like Vagabond, you know, just like there's all this diversity, you know, and hopefully it just inspires the youth to, you know, I don't know, I'd like to think I'm you know, I don't give a fuck if like a person is like, I prefer more like electronic instruments, but I am an old head in that sense of like, pick up a guitar,
same.
You know, like there's a beauty to that, to both realms, but I think you know, having developed with more like acoustic instruments, I'm like, go for it, you know.
Yeah I agree with that hard.
I think that sort of what you said about social media allowing more voices and viewpoints to be out there has been it's been a blessing and a curse, I think, because I think there's still a lot of places there's so much information now. There's so many, it's theoretically so easy for so many bands to make music, right? Even if you're just doing it electronically and not with live instrumentation. And to put it up on SoundCloud and put it up on Bandcamp, and anybody can have a band and be an artist that way. But then the gatekeepers are still white guys for the most part.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it can be sort of a blessing and a curse. It can be easier to get your music out there, but there's still only a few funnels that a lot of that information goes to for people to get their music. So that's the part that I think to me seems the best about that might be changing a little bit.
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's what I meant in terms of just like this like vigilance, you know, like just being like, you know, really kind of digging and trying to like find these like groups and stuff, you know, because I mean, it's not like, you know, Soul Glow, and I'm sure like Zulu, all these like groups that we've mentioned, like I've definitely been putting in the work, but you know, it definitely, I'm sure it took somebody kind of digging in the trenches or like word of mouth, just being like, you need to, you know, invest in these guys and give them a shot, give them a chance, you know, to where it's like, I just hope that vigilance continues, you know.
Yeah, I hope that it's not tokenism on the large part, because I know that was a thing for like after George Floyd was murdered. There were a lot of people that said that they were going to take a break from doing the sort of media thing, which I guess was good. But then it was like everybody wanted to have their black friend on the show. You know what I mean? Like, and so that kind of got like, I don't think this is good. Like, that's not the point, guys. At least from people like where I was sitting. That's not that's not maybe the right idea, guys.
Yeah, I feel it. Definitely like there's stuff like Bandcamp Friday. Like I feel like we got so much engagement from Bandcamp Friday. It's like that sucks on a level because it feels like unearned. And then it's just like, but we deserve to have that engagement. It's like a weird feeling of a mix up of both, where it's just like bands that I looked up to so hard only heard of us through the Bandcamp Friday stuff. And then it's just like, damn, I wish we had like grinded and met them the right way. But then it's just like, nah, we deserve that.
And frankly, you know what? That is the right way nowadays, really, I guess, right? Like, I mean, or I guess what is the right way, especially when we're in a 2-year societal collapse, or really a 4-year, 5-year societal collapse, whatever it's been.
Just a good 30-year run of collapse.
When was Reagan? That was
80. Pretty much,
my kid is a teenager now, and she's sort of on the like, boy, Reagan fucked the kids, didn't he? I'm like, wow. Like, I was one of those kids, and we were saying that. So now there's another whole generation, but I'm glad that she sort of gets it. This gave me the high sign that it's going to cut us off in a minute. Is it all right if can we pause here and then I'll resend the link and then we'll get back to chatting again? Because I don't want to get into the middle of like a stream of, I don't know what everybody has for time, but
it's only 1:35. Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Let's go ahead.
Okay.
Got it.
Take 2.
all right.
Or part 2 or whatever. So let's talk a little bit more about the Great American Novel. As I said, the album will definitely melt some people's faces off. If there are people who are familiar with the first album, this album just goes harder, if that makes sense. I don't know if that's an accurate way to explain it or not, but like the sort of dynamics are bigger and bolder, and the sort of quiet to loud thing is more evident. And what was sort of the goal writing this album? Was it to sort of do things bigger, or like what did the plan look like?
It was just to be insane, I think. Right, like
that's a good word for it.
It was an insane time. We got the budget that we've always hoped for, at least in my eyes, and I was just like, why not just go for it? I had showed Eli some old demos from when I was like 19, and it was just really heavy shit. The songs that would become McConnell and what was the other song?
That song shreds.
Thank you. Yeah. So McConnell and Shuck and Jive. And it was literally just like, I want to just go insane 0 to 100.
Yeah.
I remember Eli made this joke, like we were fucking around with something. He's like, "Oh, that'll be when we get in our experimental phase, like on sometime during LP2." And I was just like, "It's here."
Yeah.
And so I was just like, let's just see how insane we can get. I've actually been practicing because I'm in quarantine. I have nothing else to do. And it was just instrumentally, I think definitely was just taking it there and doing a complete left turn from what we had previously done was my goal, I think.
It's funny you mentioned those two songs because I tend to, when I listen to an album for the first time for these purposes, if it's somebody I either know I'm going to review the album or talk to them, I make notes. And those two songs specifically, if you could see my notebook, this intro fucking shreds on both of those songs. So but you have more of like a prog metal background or something like that, don't you?
Yeah, so the bands that I came up with were Cody and Cambria, At the Drive-In, 3, like all of those like proggy, weird, but still like you'd think it'd be on the radio, at least in that time in, you know, radio history. I got really good. I learned the sweet pig and I realized I was never, ever going to use it. And then 12 years went by and now I finally get to use it. And also we just have this joke that is also true that Elijah's the best musician in this group. And I just really want to just make him sweat. So this whole album, this album was our attempt to do that. I don't think he really sweated, except for like in the studio when we were doing Juvie. I think Eli had to actually take a break finally for once, but it's not enough. And that was really my petty goal. Really was like, let's just really push everyone to their limit and see how far it can go.
Yeah. How long have you been playing for, Elijah?
I'm 30 now. I think I started when I was 13, so 17. Almost 17 years. Yeah.
Do you consider yourself the best musician? I know it's probably a too humble thing, but do you consider yourself the best musician in the group? Because all three of you fucking
yeah, we've never asked you if you think you're the best. Me and Tosh just say it.
Then you know what? That's two against one. So yeah.
Majority rule. Yeah.
No, but I'm always like, you know, same thing with Erik, just grew up. The cool thing for me drummer wise for this album was I was just able to channel a lot of like the weird mathy prog shit I listened to as a teenager. So like Lamar's Volta, At the Drive-In, Terramellos, just a bunch of just like on the like proggy weird side of things, but just like grounding it where it like fits for us, which was really cool. Yeah,
I feel like I have the realization. Sorry, go for it, Tosh.
I for one do not have a prog metal or any background. I'm a pop punk girl, so this shit was hard as fuck.
Yeah.
My language.
I had the realization that we've been playing our respective instruments for like 17, 18, and 20 years respectively. And I was just like, let's just really just test ourselves. Tosh like really came, like I feel like Tosh is the MVP of this record.
When writing.
Yeah, her not having a prog background or like that drony part in Juvie. I feel like Juvie was the one that was like pretty challenging for everyone.
I was like, forget that. And then they're like, listen to Mars Volta. I'm like, no. And they're like, yes. Okay, let's do this. They had to make a list, a music band list, whatever, of inspiration playlist.
Yeah,
that's
inspiration.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, we'll listen to this. I hate all of this, but like it's really just because it's hard for me. I mean, I'm a bubblegum like pop punk girl. Like Ramones are my favorite band of all time.
Yeah, sure.
So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna fake it. I'm gonna fake all of this.
But she's faked it so well that my favorite parts tend to be the bass parts on any given song. So it's like we challenge ourselves and we cried. I definitely was just like, why did I write this for so many times? And just like, but like it came out like I had the fear where it's just like it's not gonna translate well. We don't have a big enough budget as I thought, and I'd be freaking out and hyperventilating. Like, no, trust the process. And like I think we definitely all like once we channeled in what this album's going to sound like, I think we really took it, you know, and it paid off, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And as somebody, and I sort of have to back up what you just said, Erik, as somebody who grew up wanting to be a bass player, but then like I have a little brother and he actually became a bass player and is a music teacher and shit like that. So he actually got good. And I was like, well, we can't have two bass players in the same family because
that doesn't
we can't just both jam on our old Ibanez's together.
Mhm.
So I switched to guitar, but I always grew up wanting to be a bass player. And so that's always what I'm sort of drawn to, is the rhythm in a song. And so even though I'm a shitty guitar player, like I always wish that I played bass or drums, because I'm always drawn to the rhythm. And I will say that I was sort of drawn to that side of it as well. I shouldn't say I don't have a prog metal background. I don't have like a 90s, early 2000s prog metal background. I have like a Rush prog metal background.
Okay,
So,
like Dream Theater and Rush and all that
quite,
shit.
quite literally just Rush.
Oh, okay.
Yo,
No King
that's-
Diamond.
What,
Okay.
you know, what
like
better
somebody
band?
tried to play
True.
Dream Theater for me once, and I was like, well, these guys are just trying to be Rush. And because like Rush
Oh,
was
that hurts to hear.
my focal point, but they
Oh God. Okay.
I don't know from that. I knew that Rush was like this amazing band, and so that if you were sort of prog and in an amazing band, you must have been trying to be Rush. That was my frame of reference.
That's fair. Rush is really, they're the Coheed of the 80s for sure, where it's just like you can do this weird shit and you can still be on the radio and no one will bat an eye, I think. So that fully makes sense.
I feel like they made that possible, right? Like,
absolutely.
You can have synthesizers in like 11/9 time and shit like that and be played on the radio.
Yeah,
I was just like watching a live video of XYZ, and I think they're playing it in an arena, and I was like, that's so fire that this like weird ass proggy band at their height was playing arena like stadium venues.
There are, if you not to talk about Rush for an hour, although I will. There are videos they played in Rio. Mm-hmm. I think it's called Rush in Rio or something like that. It was a DVD that came out, I don't know, probably 20 years ago at this point. And I forget how many tens of thousands of people they're playing for. But that song, YYZ, obviously is an instrumental song, and the crowd is singing along. But the song is instrumental, and it is wild.
Yeah,
it's like to have the whole crowd, like 100,000 people singing along to a song that doesn't have words.
But that riff though is like so melodically great too.
Yeah,
like, I'm just like, when like just hearing it, I'm just like, that's such a to where like your riff can be like basically a vocal part is insane. But also that it's like slightly complex too. I'm like, that's so sick.
Yeah, they just ticked all the boxes. They got a vocalist that's playing bass at the same time. They would do the weird shit like the washing machines on stage. That's awesome. Just their whole backdrop. Like they ticked all, they do it right.
It was rotisserie chickens for a while. They had like that would be the catering, is they would just make rotisserie chickens instead, because he played straight in. Yeah, that song, it's just Morse code. That's all that be. Mm-hmm. Which to me, like, I think I had been a fan of theirs for 20 years before I actually heard the explanation for what that rhythm was. I was like, holy shit, like, what a bunch of dorks.
Yeah, that's the shit I love. Facts. Like lore and little like Easter eggs and stuff like that. That's huge influence.
Oh, absolutely. So that's another way of patting Natasha on the back, because those are the parts that I was sort of drawn to on this album, because I can't do all the technical guitar shit. Like I want to be able to, but I don't understand the physics behind it. As somebody who's played guitar for 25 years, I can't make my fingers do that.
Yeah.
Perhaps I should have been practicing during quarantine or ever.
That's the ticket. Yeah. Just quarantine, never ever else.
How did you land on those influences? I as somebody who missed the entire, like, I don't even know what wave that was, the Coheed and Cambria and that whole as somebody who missed that whole wave entirely because I was off elsewhere in my musical journey at that time. How did you come to that?
Oh God. I don't know. Eli, do you know how you did? Because I had to think about it, because I was like 9, so I really had to remember.
Oh wow. And so it was music that appealed to you, although I guess Rush appealed to me at 9, so I guess that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I'm like a decade older.
Yeah. My dad had given me a Megadeth CD, and I think like I picked up a guitar, but as far as getting into prog though, I had to really think about it.
Which Megadeth CD?
Oh God. High Speed Dirt is on it. Countdown to Extinction.
With Symphony of Destruction.
Yeah. But like then, I didn't really start playing guitar for like a few more years. I think I lived in Alaska for me. So I was at the mall and I saw Relationship of Command CD. I was like, this looks cool. and then it just like exploded. And then, you know, LimeWire was big. And then Coheed's Favorite House Atlantic came out, and it was all over MTV, and it kind of just snowballed from there. What about you, Eli?
I mean, so my introduction to Prague was like through At the Drive-In, At the Drive-In being from El Paso. By the time I got in At the Drive-In, it was like, oh, bro, they've been broken up for years, but they have these two other bands. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'll get into both. But I just, being a drummer, and Tony Hajar is a great drummer, but I mean, Volta drummers I just gravitated to because I was that asshole kid who's just like, oh, the harder the better, even though I'll never learn how to play it.
Same.
And like all of my friends, you know, closest friends till this day, a majority of them are drummers. So it was always just us trying to find like the most obscure, most difficult drumming. And so from there, it was like I said, just a bunch of math rock, like Caramelos, Don Caballero, just stuff like that. And then the harder stuff was like through my cousin JL, because he plays in a grindcore band in El Paso. And
was there a big scene in El Paso?
I would say so. I actually just learned on our Wonder Years tour, they played in a DIY spot that used to exist called the Naylair, which was this dude Nene. He would just have house shows in his
the Naylair. Okay.
Yeah. And Dan was like, no, it was his drummer. And he was like, wait, you're from El Paso, right? Yeah, Kennedy. And Kennedy was like, did you ever hear of a place called the Naylair? And I was like, yeah, dude, like that was like, you know, if you couldn't get a show at any of the venues, which was actually really tough to do back during that time, if you were like a hardcore grindcore group, you would either do the Naylair. There was a DIY spot literally called the Spot, but the main one was called this bar called Chicks. And that's like where I just like learned about like basically all like the hardcore brutal bands of that time, Oceano.
Yeah. Oh wow. Wow. I forgot about both of them. Oh my God.
Yeah, man. You know, but even then, like you know, just bands kind of on the sidelines of that, like Foxy Shazam, all these groups that had, or Heavy Low, just all these weird math core-ish kind of groups. And yeah, through that is kind of how I just discovered a lot of things. From McConnell in particular, that kind of like blast beat part that I do when it goes from like really quiet to loud, I took from a reference from this band called Circle Takes the Square. And they used to do a lot of stuff where it was like very blasty, but then it would get like soft, like out of nowhere. So that was all like my introduction.
See, to me, that's a Pixies thing. I mean, it's not.
Oh no, and I mean, I'm like grounded in Dave Grohl drumming. Like that's the foundation. So like a lot of things, it's funny, like where Erik doesn't have the context of 90s alt, I think that's where I come in, because I'm always, that's the song structure I grew up on, very Dave Grohl, Jimmy Chamberlain, Smashing Pumpkins, you know, to where it's just like I'm always thinking in that element of like soft, loud. It's, you know, it's just, those to me were like the pinnacle examples of that shit. And of course, you know.
The Pumpkins became sort of like a joke because of Billy Corgan or whatever, because it, like Billy Corgan likes Billy Corgan more than anybody else likes anybody.
Oh
but those first handful of Pumpkins records are awesome for that, especially.
I'm just like, man, like it's to see like kind of what he's become, but it's just like, God, some 1979 is a perfect pop song. It's a perfect
absolutely
pop song, you know. And then just like Churro Brock, you know. And I think for me, the cool thing, and you know, to kind of bring it back to representation, even on that scale, having James Iha as a guitarist,
right.
I just remember being like, what, like, you know, like, you know, this dude is
this
in
guy on the cover of Guitar World.
I was like, what the fuck, like this is awesome, you know. So like that, especially like along with the harder stuff, there's always that kind of 90s foundation in the background too.
Tasha, I realized I've never asked you, did you ever even give prog music a shot in your yesteryears, or you just said nah?
You know what, Deadass, we've been talking about prog music right now. I don't know what it is. I'm so sorry.
None of these bands are sounding familiar. No.
I mean, I heard of Pumpkins. I'm sure that's not prog, I don't think. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I'm just realizing like I've never been asked like, did you even have a band you were like that you tried out and you were like, fuck that?
I listened to a lot of screamo.
Okay, okay.
That's as close as that gets. Yeah.
Okay.
That's another thing I missed entirely. Like screamo, I felt like I was a little too. I remember there was one specific Warp Tour, I think, where it where the needle shifted from being the sort of classic skate punk, alternative punk thing to being more screamo. And I was like, wow, I feel like I'm too old for this. I was 22 or whatever, but I was like, wow,
yeah, same.
I feel like I'm too old for this now. And then that's what obviously Warp Tour became. But what was your entry to punk rock, Tasha? I know you said Ramones your favorite band ever, as well they should be.
I have a lot of intros. Like I listened to a lot of Oi as well, a lot of street punk. I listened to a lot of hardcore as well. And
did you grow up in New York City?
No, I grew up in Delaware. 302 Wrecking Crew.
Can't you tell from her Delawarean accent?
Okay, you need to stop right now.
That's all.
You're in the public. Nobody wants to hear that. Anyway,
is there a Delaware accent? I don't know.
No, what did I
don't
just
know
say?
from that.
We don't have to continue with this.
No comment. I don't want to be rude.
Boy, there's
the record.
Oh my God. All right. Where's the exit button? I'm done.
Sorry, continue, Tosh. Continue your very thoughtful answer that I'm interrupting. Go for it.
Thank you. So I was heavily in my local scene, like in Delaware and Westchester, PA. We have like this certain very specific sound, like when it comes to Westchester, like your Plow United, things of that nature. Yeah, that's what I was very much into. Explosive Kate, bands like that was my introduction. Like even we talk about Ramones, one of the very first shows I went to was like MXPX. My sister brought me to it down in Newark, Delaware. I was also heavily into ska, which is Erik's favorite genre as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw like My Boss Tunes was one of the first bands I saw when I was 11 years old.
Sure.
Yeah.
One of my very first punk rock shows as well was Mighty Mighty Bosstones. I'm from Southern New Hampshire, so I mean, Mighty Mighty Bosstones played everywhere. Like I grew up an hour north of Boston, maybe. So through the early and mid 90s, the Bosstones played everywhere all the time.
Yes.
You couldn't get away from it. But like original Dropkick, like when they were a 4-piece street punk band, not like
Dude, this is the shit that goes over my head. I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
Ducky Boys. Let's get into it.
Ducky Boys, Markland.
Is that a band name? Ducky Boys?
The Ducky Boys.
Was this 90s probably?
This is exactly mid 90s. Yeah.
A lawless time.
Like when I was heavily into Manson, like the first 3 albums. Before they got ska, that kind of was weird for me, but I get it. So that's kind of my background.
I feel like the weird part was Tim Armstrong or Lars, really, and I'm sort of friendly with Lars, but the weird part is like, I don't know, trying to do the Jamaican patois thing, but you're like a white guy from Berkeley.
Oh God, I remember that.
Is that a thing that happened? Are you serious?
It literally happened on record.
And what year of our Lord did this happen?
I don't know, but I think that's when I checked out.
Go 99, probably.
Okay, it gets a pass.
It's
like pre-Y2K for most things.
It's like with 311. Like 311 were a band from Omaha, Nebraska, and they tried to sing with that like Jamaican patois thing, and it's how people let them get away with that and become a massive band. It
was a time.
It was 95 was a different time.
It was a time.
It was a time, bro. I mean, that Sublime. But for me personally, all that like kind of slaps. Like I don't know. There's like, I mean, if you're gonna
don't tell my dad.
Commit, sometimes it goes over, sometimes it doesn't.
I had never even thought of the 311 thing, and then somewhat recently there's like a radio station up here where one of the guys was ragging on them for being from Omaha, but like how did anybody let them get away with singing like that? Mind you, and this is Boston, so we say what you will. But he was like, how did they let them get away with that? And I was like, oh shit, yeah, you know what? That's like
We're all
super
complicit.
super cringeworthy.
Yeah.
You missed that whole 90s punk rock street. I don't know.
I miss it. I mean, that was my formative years. So like it's instilled deeply, way too deep within me. And I can't shake it.
Just same here.
Unless I try.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Those I try to introduce my kid because my kid is now the age that I was when I got into a lot of that sort of street punk stuff. And she's like, she'll listen to some of my music, but then there are definitely lines that she draws.
That's fair.
Although I will say, I was listening to the Great American Novel the other day, and I forget what song came on. I think it was Milk and Honey. The video for Milk and Honey came on, and she was like, "Oh, Dad, what's that? That's a really pretty song."
Yes.
I was like,
Hell
"Oh,
yeah.
Come here.
Yeah.
let me teach you something." Actually, no, let them teach us something. I don't.
Yeah.
This has been a lot of fun. I don't want to end up getting cut off again. This has been a lot of fun. I hope that people, if they haven't pre-ordered Great American Novel already, it's out sometime theoretically soon.
The
I know
25th. I think 9 days left.
I know that release dates, especially with physical copies, are a bit of a moving target.
Yeah.
Thanks to Adele, but like everybody has blamed her, and I'm fine with that. That's fine.
I had no idea. Okay.
No, because part of the reason that record plants got so backed up last year is Adele demanding like 500,000 copies of that last album on release date or whatever. So that just sort of ground everything to a halt. And
okay.
It's true of all the other, like the record store day stuff that people do and reissues and whatever, but everybody seems to be fine blaming Adele. And
I mean, who's going to tell her no? Not me.
She's rich. She can
But
is that the physical date for the vinyl as well as the 25th, or is that something?
No, I think late April. Late April, I think. Luckily, like we recorded this shit 13 months ago, so we were pretty early to get our vinyl like ordered.
Oh, okay.
So we didn't get pushed back on vinyl at all. They were just like, let's do like a staggered approach where it's like, two releases is better than one. It's better to roll 2 12-sided dies than one.
Yeah. And then what's next? You guys are on tour very, very soon, aren't you? Overseas.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna believe it till we step foot on British soil, but this is the tour that we were supposed to do when COVID shut it down. So finally, our headlining tour in UK and Europe, and then Pooza Fest, and then things we're not allowed to talk about yet. But things.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
We'll talk then.
Yeah.
Thanks to all three of you for doing this. Everybody, pre-order Great American Novel. I'll put links in all of the descriptions and whatever where people can watch the videos and pre-order the new album and listen to the old album and follow you guys on tour, because everybody should, because really this is the stuff we need to be listening to and championing, because you're, like I said, a band that when I first heard you, I said, holy shit, that's nothing like I've ever heard, except that it's all of the influences that I love and it's perfect. So
thank you.
Let me stop